Ladies, I am Ashma Aryal, your Master of Ceremony, for today's seminar on measuring nutrition, health, and poverty in small areas. How low can you go? This program is organized by Nepal Development Research Institute, NDRI. I would like to thank NDRI for providing me this wonderful opportunity. A warm welcome to all. We are delighted to have various government officials, academia, and uh, researchers as we gather to learn and discuss on nutrition, health, and poverty in small areas. Before we begin, I would like to request everyone to kindly turn off or silence your mobile phones. Now, I would like to request everyone to introduce themselves with their names, or designation, and affiliated organization. I would like to start from myself. My name is Ashma Aryal. I am working as an outreach and communication officer at NDRI. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Sankar Shrestha, Executive Director at NDRI.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Anjana Lamismani, Research Associate at NDRI. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Emeritus, Research Associate at NDRI.
Namaste, everyone. My name is Karan Chabuna. I am working as a mathematics teacher, statistics teacher in Calcutta University.
My name is Emeritus. I am Harish Sabanipani. I am working at Policy Research Institute as a research director.
Namaskar. My name is Kumar Guru. I belong to Nepal Development Research Institute, NDRI. I'm a board member there. I served as an executive director before. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Utsaha Gartula, Senior Research Assistant at NDRI. Namaste, everyone. My name is Sujay Shrestha, and I'm Senior Research Assistant.
Namaste, everyone. I am NDRI.
Namaste. My name is Vikram Narayan. I was Director General of Central Bureau of Statistics at TGNB. Now I'm done.
Good afternoon. My name is Ishwari Prasad Bhandari. I was director in CBS Central Bureau of Statistics. Now I am freelancer, and I was working in Nepal Living Standards Published taken in small area estimation.
Namaste, I am Shanti Kalasivili, Research and Innovation Department Head, Malay College of Engineering, TU, and Managing Director of Krishna Smart Engineering Solution Private Limited.
Also, you have to tell that.
Okay, Steve Haslett is my supervisor in my PhD.
I insisted that because the point is, it's always good to have somebody you have educated in the forum. No? So my name is Navraj Katuda. I'm serving as the senior research specialist in NDRI. I'm also the past president of immediate past president of NDRI. So it's really wonderful to have you, Professor, with us today, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aruna Parikhi. I'm working as a team lead at IIT. I'm agriculture economics. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sneha Vaidya, working as research assistant at IIT.
Namaste. Good afternoon. I'm Surendra Gautam, and I work for an international organization called AW International as a regional director for South Asia.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pankaj Karma. I'm working as a senior researcher at By training, I'm a behavioral analyst, and also I'm a visiting faculty at Emeritus.
My name is Bila Anu, from the Haslett, Canada. Namaste and good afternoon. I am Jivan Polu from Haslett, and I work in GIS. Namaskar everyone. I am Bipin Kumar Pandya, and I am working in NSO as a director.
Namaste everyone, I am Ravika Srestha, board member.
Namaste, this is Vishwanath Parai, working at NSO. Namaste, my name is Sushil Sharma, Director, National Statistics Office.
Namaste, Krishna Pahari. Currently, I am the president of NDRI. Thank you.
Namaskar, Hemraj Reddy, Deputy Chief Statistician at National Statistics Office.
Namaste everyone, this is Manoj Vivek from National Statistics.
Namaste and good afternoon. This is Sridhar Thapa from Old Program. Thank you. Namaste and good afternoon. My name is Haile. I'm head of program in the
Namaste, I'm Hilary Smith. I'm Steve Haslett's partner. I'm actually affiliated to the Australian National University as a researcher in education and linguistics and community development.
Namaste. I'm not sure I need an introduction at this point. It's been good. But I'll provide original background.
Thank you very much, everyone. Without further ado, I would like to move on to the main agenda for today's event. Please allow me to introduce to our presenter, Professor Emeritus Stephen Haslett. Professor Haslett is a globally renowned expert on small area estimates and has led many works related to SAE of poverty, health, and nutrition in various countries in Asia Pacific, including Nepal, where he has led the first work on small area estimates of poverty and malnutrition in Nepal in 2006. His presentation is entitled Measuring Nutrition, Health, and Poverty in Small Areas, Bangladesh, Philippines, and Nepal. I would like to welcome you, Professor Haslett, on the stage.
Well, thank you all. I'm sorry for the lack of speed in getting started. I'm not quite sure if I need this microphone or not.
Yes.
I do need this microphone. I've been given instructions. Okay. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank you all for being here, and also for the invitation to talk. It wasn't really my intention when I first came to Nepal to talk to anybody except friends, but you're all friends, so I think this covers it quite well. And I just wanted to sort of go back a little bit through a bit of history. I've come to Nepal a number of times, but I've done one of the principles involved in doing the small area estimation in Nepal in around 2005 and about 2014. These things tend to follow up from the census. So the census being every 10 years, these things happen every 10 years. And with each new census, there's new survey information, and together they tend to be used for modelling. And that's the pattern in all of the countries that I've been involved in. My own background is that I've directed a number of statistical consulting units in different places. And that's really why Shanti knows me, because she needed advice on design of a sample survey. She didn't need very much advice at all. She knew what she was doing. It was very good. But I think the point is that I've got a lot of background in applied statistics, but I also do work in theoretical statistics. So there's a kind of a mix of these two things in small area estimation. And when I talk today, I'm not going to talk very much about the technical material. I'm going to raise some issues that you might want to think about. I can talk more about the technical stuff, but I don't think there's going to be sufficient time. All right, so my background is with that. I'm sort of affiliated to 3 universities at once. So, one being Massey University in New Zealand, but also to the Australian National University. And I'm a professorial fellow at the University of Wollongong, where there's a very strong applied statistics group as well. I do need to acknowledge a whole lot of people. I'll just leave the slide up for a moment. Chiefly, I suppose, in terms of actually getting the work done, it's Jeff Jones. So Jeff and I have been here and been involved in those 2 sequence 10 year apart. We came here and did the small area estimation of poverty. We didn't. I'll use poverty in a slightly broad sense at the moment. I'll come back to exactly what we did at this time. But there's also other people who were involved from Massey, and particularly the UN World Food Programme in all of the countries involved. And of course the colleagues in the statistical agencies, because no matter how sophisticated the technique involved in this, you don't get very far without data and without local knowledge. So I've always viewed this whole process as one where there's a lot of communication required both ways. Both, from my point of view, perhaps the more technical material, but from the other direction, there's a lot of local knowledge that's absolutely critical in managing to make small area estimation work well. And so I very much appreciated the collegiality really, and the conversations that we've had, both in Nepal and in the other countries. I'm not going to talk a lot about that particular paper at the end, but it's some work I've done with Sumankanti, who's a Bangladeshi, and it's really because a lot of these methods, small area methods, need comparing, and of course, statisticians like arguing, so there's a lot of argument about what's the best method. I'm just going to say one thing about that now and hope to come back to it. The best method depends on what sort of data you have available. So anyone who tells you that one small area estimation method is always best clearly hasn't got a very broad view of the types of data that you have. So I think this is critically important, because you don't want necessarily to have somebody doing this sort of work who says, my technique is always best. It won't be. It can't always be best. Very much depends on the data you've got. Now, this is far too small to read, unfortunately, but I think the point is, and it's a rather longer abstract than the one that I originally gave to Krishna, but I'm not going to hinge on this very long, but I just want to point out that really efficient targeting of aid relies on detailed information. And the reason that people are interested in small area estimation is that it's a way of taking the survey data, which you may be able to get down to some particular level of aggregation, and ask what you do if you wanted to go lower, if you wanted to go finer, if you wanted more detailed stuff. So, for example, here in Nepal, the work we've done has been at a level. I think about 950 of them, as I recall. So what we're looking to do is to take the survey data, the very good survey data, but which is not intended to provide you like a level estimates, model it, link it to the census, and by doing that, come up with model-based estimates which are usable at like a level. So the point really is that it's not so much the technique, it's the benefit. The benefit is that you can now allocate resources better. And that's the whole point of small area estimation. What sort of resources do you want to allocate? Well, different resources will require different small area estimates. The World Bank, for example, has tended to focus quite strongly on poverty incidence, gap and severity. And what we've done in various countries is looked at things like food expenditure. We've also looked at stunting, underweight and wasting in children. And here last time, we had a look also at diarrhea in children. And there's an interesting story around that, which I hope to get to before I finish talking. The next section in here, I'm not asking you to read in detail. It really just emphasizes the whole idea that different techniques are useful in different situations. So I'm not going to go into all of that level detail. That's the sort of argument that statisticians tend to have at conferences. Years ago, we had Millennium Development Goals, and food was a very critical part of that. And I'm going to slide over a number of these slides here because I suspect most people in the room know at least as much about the topic as I do. But the point is that the first goal was to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. And these were the Millennium Development Goals were the ones that were current at the time when Jeff and I first came here in about 2004, I think it was. And then looked at putting together the small area estimates. And the historical goals, targets, and indicators, the point was that the target was to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. So my work has been principally with the World Food Programme. Some years ago in the Philippines, I did some work with the World Bank, but principally I've been focused in the small area estimation on undernutrition measures. Well, the problem is that there's progress. It's more in some places than others. Again, I'm not going to dwell on this slide. We moved on to the Sustainable Development Goals. But again, we're still looking at ending hunger and achieving food security and improved nutrition. So that's really driven most of what I've done. So we've got different goals, targets, and indicators. And one of the things with the SDGs that probably wasn't true of the MDGs, at least to the same extent, is how many of them there are. So we've got 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but within those we've got a whole lot of different categories. And what I'm finding now more and more is there's a wish to have many, many, many small area estimates, not just for local areas, but local areas and a whole lot of different measures. Well, it's an enormous amount of work, and I think it's useful to stop and think and focus rather than trying to do everything you could think of. Because every one of the things you think of needs a whole lot more modelling and a whole lot more time. There is no off-the-shelf system. I know I've talked to official statisticians in other countries, and what they'd ideally like is a system where you push your data in one end and the small area estimates come out the other end in an hour or so. It takes months. It takes months just for one indicator to get a really good feel for whether you've got it right. And it's so important to get it right because the amount of money involved in doing a small area estimation is absolutely trivial in comparison with misallocating the resources you've got. That's why this topic is so important. It's because it saves money. It saves resources. It allows for better allocation. Well, the 17 main goals, I've listed them here, but you all know those. I'm sure you could recite them in your sleep, so I'm not going to hold on to this slide. But the point is there are nearly 200 subcategories. So we can't do small area estimation for 200 different measures. It's just not feasible. Progress, well, some forward, some back. I think this is at 2023. I think one of the things that comes into this is the effect of COVID, or you tend to call it, what do you call it here? Corona? Yeah. Now the point is though that about this is that this is actually going to complicate doing estimation this time round, because it's going to very much depend on how that problem affected how the census was done in 2020 or thereabouts. In many countries they started the census, they stopped, they tried to do it again later. There was a whole lot of administrative problems, And that will have impacts on how easy it is to do the small area estimation. In every country, it'll be different. But every time we do this, we find that there are some new problems, some old problems have gone away in terms of actually doing the modelling and getting the data straight. The one that's going to present difficulties this time around is certainly the effect of COVID or corona on the data collection. Undernourishment, well, we've had ups and downs. We seem to be having an increase in problems with undernourishment in recent years. I'm going to talk briefly about a food poverty line because this was really what we did in Nepal last time round. So we're not so much focused on the poverty line, on expenditure. We're interested in the amount related to food. So we've got food requirements in kilocalories a day. We've got the basket of typical food items. We've got kilocalories from the basket and the cost of a suitably scaled basket. This is the sort of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index problem in every country. You've got to decide what the basket is, you've got to work out what the costs are, you've got to look at how that's changing over time. And also cash required for a person to be able to eat enough. Now, the thing about the food poverty line is that it's not a question of total expenditure. You have to make adjustment for necessary expenditure that people will spend, even if they're very close to the poverty line. Usually it's based on income and expenditure data. So we've got household income and expenditure surveys, we've got income or expenditure. We have to decide whether we're going to look at per capita or per adult equivalent. And there's not a one answer to that. I think that's a decision that needs to be made essentially by government, not by us. Economic poverty. Well, again, as I mentioned, the poverty line is the food poverty line plus non-food expenses. We look at the non-food expenditure of those near food poverty. And there are a set of measures that are often called the FGT measures that basically measure either a poverty gap, how far away people are, a poverty incidence, which is how many people are in poverty. And the next measure, if you increase that coefficient alpha to 1, is actually gives a reasonably good measure of the resources required to bring everybody up to the poverty line. So there are different types of measures. This became very popular because it formalized a difficulty. And that is one that's much, much broader than this. And it occurs even for WFP in its work. And that is that there are many, many, many different indicators. Even indicators are meant to be something else. Indicators of similar sorts of things. There's things like food consumption score. There's a whole range of other measures. And the question is which one to use. And I think the reason this one came in was because it formalized the idea of what poverty incidence gap and severity might measure. So poverty incidence, broad proportion below the poverty line, poverty gap, average amount below the poverty line, or you can add them up and work out the amount of resource required, and poverty severity, which gives even more weight for the very poor. FGT, well, that's the paper that was originally published, the authors. So, but there are other measures. We've got measures of kilocalories. We did that as well. We looked at kilocalories, and there's difficulties in turning measures which are basically expenditure into measures which are kilocalories, but I won't go into those. And as I said, we looked at stunting, wasting, and underweight. And here in Nepal, last time through, we looked at diarrhea. Interestingly, they occur in different parts of the country, and that's very important because, strangely, stunting in Nepal is negatively correlated with underweight. Negatively correlated. And you think, how could this be? The reason is that the stunting occurs mostly in the mountains, and the underweight occurs mostly in the terrain. And this is really why it's so important to think carefully about what a program is that you want and what small area is, what variables, what measures you want small area estimates for. Because if you're interested in looking at dealing with stunting, then you need quite a different program, even in terms of location, to the one that you would have for underweight. Now, there's a very popular idea that you take all your measures and you put them through a statistical procedure, which is usually principal component analysis, and you turn the handle and you get some aggregate measure of poverty. In Nepal, please be very, very, very careful because of this negative correlation between some of the measures. That underweight is negatively correlated with stunting. Negatively correlated. If they're all positively correlated with one another, it'd be wonderful. We could just have an overall measure, some sort of aggregate, and use that. But you cannot do that here if you're interested in food. So it's some sort of weighted index. It says, you know, we'll take this measure and we'll scale it a little and we'll add it to this one and add it to that one and all the rest of it. But the problem is you cannot come up with a good measure using principal component analysis where you've got things that are negatively correlated with one another in this way. So I'm going to move on to talking about small area estimation a little more. So it's a statistical modelling technique. So we're trying to extract a bit more information out of the data that's already been collected. And usually that involves surveys and censuses. So the reason this thing goes on a cycle is because the census is far too expensive to do every year. It's usually done every 10 years. Some countries it's done every 5, but the international standard is more 10. And if you've got a census every 10 years and you need a census to do small area estimates, this is why I came here in 2004, why I came again in 2014, and we're nearly in 2024, so we're back into doing this again. Well, it's not my decision, but I mean, I'm just suggesting that this is the time that that question ought to be considered. So the small area estimates are often presented as poverty maps because they're easier to look at. They've been done in many, many, many countries. I think last count I saw was well over 70 countries where the small area estimation has been done at some point. I've been involved in a number of these, but I'm currently involved in Indonesia. I've been involved in the Philippines, Cambodia, Thailand. I've been involved in surveys in Vietnam, Nepal. There was a feasibility study done in Laos, Bangladesh. I think that most of the places I've been involved in have been in the sort of Asian region. So, as I said, they've become very important for aid and resource allocation, because if you want to allocate resource better, you need finer level detail. So at one end, there's all this technical stuff about how best to go about doing it. At the other end, there's why you'd want to do it and what you're going to do with the information that you get out the other end. Because the important thing about the modelling is you not only come up with estimates, for example, for ELACA, for stunting, for example, but because it's modelled data, there's a measure of error in it. And that measure of error is pretty important because you need to be able to, if you're going to allocate to one area and not to another, you need to be sure that they really are different. So the Philippines, I think this is far too fine for you to see, but the point about these two maps is that this map is a finer level of detail than the other. This was looking at, we're looking at poverty incidence in this particular case. In Cambodia, the more red the area, the more difficulties there are. This is prevalence of stunting at commune level in Cambodia. But I want to point out something else that's quite important about these two maps. The one on the left is population density. The one on the right is the percentage of people, or the percentage of children under the age of 5 who are stunted. And you'll see in terms of percentage, the problem is mostly up in the northeast. But in terms of the number of children that are stunted, they're mostly through here. So you've got to make decisions about where you're going to allocate aid. And they're really hard decisions. Are you going to allocate aid to the children who are most stunted, the highest prevalence of stunted, or are you going to go to the places that are easier to get to? And that's a policy decision. You know, somebody has to make that decision. So it's not as though even when you've got the small area estimates, that everything is clear, even if you're only looking at one particular variable like stunting. So the important thing about this is no matter how clever, no matter how sophisticated the small area estimates, no matter how beautiful the maps, there are still decisions to be made. And they're policy decisions. And they're decisions about how to allocate resources. So beautiful maps are all very nice. I like beautiful maps, we all like colour, but it's not an end in itself. This is Bangladesh. And again, you'll see that this one, poverty on the left-hand side, proportion below the poverty line, stunting in children under 5. You'll see the patterns are different. Again, you know, just as in Nepal. So these maps are generally from 2015 or so, the last census. Well, again, they're different again. Now we're looking at underweight and stunted children under 5. Nepal, all right, something familiar. So here's the population density. Here we've got, the ones we've got here are stunting, wasting, and diarrhea. So here's stunting, here's wasting, much like underweight on the Terai, and here's prevalence of diarrhea. Now, we did diarrhea. Diarrhea is a slightly different thing to model because you hope the child either has diarrhea or not. Most of the things we model are continuous variables. But nevertheless, the important finding in this was that it was because UNICEF wanted to find out about detail for diarrhea. But the important story in this is that if you're looking at wasting, it's obvious it's very much connected with diarrhea. So wasting in children in Nepal is connected with diarrhea. On the other hand, stunting seems to be related rather more to a long-term shortage of food and not to diarrhea. Okay, so these are the way all these things fit together is also the other part of the story. You know, if you're going to have a program that's going to do something, you need to be clear what it is you're trying to do and how it relates to the other measures that you could have. I think one of the things I've been asked at many of these, at the end of most of these studies, we do a presentation. And sometimes people say to me, the question that comes up most often is, which map should we use? And my response is, what is your question? What do you want to know? You know, what is your program? So it's not that one map or one pretty picture is going to solve the problem. These are supports to policy matters, you know, and hard decisions about where resources are going to be allocated. I'm going to skip over these slides because it really is the technical part of this, and I'm sort of aware that nobody's telling me, but I probably spent most of my time talking. I can go on.
You still have 7 minutes, sir. You still have 7 minutes.
I've got 7 minutes left. I can. Christian's telling me I can take more, but anyway. I mean, I think too that I'd appreciate, you know, when I finish talking, if there's time for a little bit of discussion, that would be useful too. Now, this data framework is really the idea that I'm trying to explain here. What happens? You've got a census on the one hand, you've got a sample survey on another. So the important thing is if you look down these columns here, these are actually information about areas, small areas. In fact, you can even extend that. Sometimes it's information about individuals or households. When you do a sample survey, you only get some observations. Okay? That's what the point is. It's not a census, it's a sample. You only got some of them. But you've got other measures that you might take in here. What's this, for example, this is number in the household, electricity supply, amount of agricultural land. Excuse me. And there are many such measures that you might have in a census as well as in a survey. So the core idea behind the small area estimate estimation methods that are most accurate is that you match up, and what you're looking at is you take the survey data and you fit a model to it. Because in the survey is the thing that you actually want. There's a measure of stunting, or there's a measure of underweight in children. In the census, there's no such measure. But there are lots of other variables in the census. And the basic idea is that because they're in the survey and the census, we could go to the census data, if we had a good model from the survey, and predict for every child what its status is relative to stunting or underweight. And at the level of each child, it won't be accurate. It won't even be accurate at the level if you scale it up a little bit more. But by the time you get to ELACA level, although I understand we've changed from ELACA, but once we get to that sort of level, where there's about, in Nepal, in the case of Nepal, was 700 to 1,000 areas, which we call small areas. By the time we aggregate, we can get something that's accurate enough. So the general rule is, and it varies, but the general rule is you really can't make this work for fewer than 5,000 to 7,000 households. So you get estimates for aggregations of 5,000 to 7,000 households. If you try and push it even further, what ends up happening is the estimates become so inaccurate that they become useless. Or they may even be worse than useless. People might try to use them. And then they start allocating on the basis that's not a proper basis. So the point about the modelling is we can take the level at which we were able to do for the survey in terms of estimates, the area level, and we can make it finer, we can make it more detailed, we can make it as lower level. And by doing that, we're better able to allocate resources. So the price is that somebody has to spend quite a lot of time doing statistical modelling and doing it well. Because if you don't do it well, what ends up happening is you end up with answers that actually aren't answers, and you may congratulate yourself, but unfortunately, it's not going to be very good. So can I just emphasise, and part of the reason I sort of mentioned what I've done in my career is that this is hard. It's hard to do well. It's actually very hard to do well. So there have been places I've been where organisations have suggested that what we should do is we should have a quick course, get it round up people locally. We'll have a quick course. It might last 2 weeks if we've got time. Only people can't actually attend for the whole 2 weeks because they've got other jobs to do. And at the end of that, we'll have some good small area estimates. No, you won't. You won't. What you'll have is a group of half-trained people. And the complication with the small area estimation is, here in Nepal, you do some excellent surveys. But the point about the surveys is that you're doing those on a fairly continuous basis. The problem with the small area estimation is 10 years in between. So the people who train up, even no matter how well they're trained up, in 10 years they've gone somewhere else. They're no longer at NSO. They're gone. So this is kind of the problem. And I've been very fortunate because I've been able to work in the university. And the consequence is this is one of my research interests. So I've been able to maintain this interest for 30 years. It makes a big difference. Right? So I'm not suggesting that you get me to do the small area estimation if you decide to do it. That's not my decision. Although maybe I'm too old. But the point is that you do need to get people who are good, and you do need to involve them, and they need to involve you. It's critically important that everyone is talking to one another because you've got an enormous amount of information here that you just can't do the small area estimation without. Area to do with the way areas are structured, to do with the way questionnaires have been put together, particularly since I don't speak Nepali. Somebody's got to help explain to me. And the difficulty is the translations of questionnaires into English because you have to look at the questionnaires. And if you want to act from survey and census, if we're looking at what actually has been administered, it may be different to what's actually written down in the translation into English. I can't do that. Somebody local has to help me. All right. So that's the basic idea. So I'm just going to finish off by talking about some of the models very briefly. I've got a lot more material, but I think maybe we haven't got the week. So I'll just cover this. I wanted to talk a little bit about technique, not too much, just a little bit. So the basic idea of small area estimation, it borrows strength from the relationship between the observations and the model. So what it's saying is that what's going on in one area is actually connected in a way to what's happening in other areas, not directly, but because the same drivers are happening at the back. And if we can understand what those drivers are and model them well, then we can make use of information from other parts in order to strengthen the estimates within a particular small area. Now, the method that was initially put together by the World Bank, which was put together by Chris Elbers and Peter Lanyau and his wife, was quite a straightforward model in a way. It was what we call a linear regression model. And it used because it had a lot of very rich census data, it was able to use a particular type of model. What's happened since, there's been a lot of argument about whether it's a good method. My response is it's an excellent method if you've got the right kind of data. Right? What happened instead was that J&K Rao, who's in Canada, came up with an alternative, which is called empirical best prediction. Now, the reason he came up with this is because he works in Canada, in the United States, and he's never allowed to see unit record census data. He's only allowed to see cross-tabulations. So he has to put together a sort of pretend census and work from that. Data sources are not so rich. He can't model anything at cluster level, which is what's required in ELL. And he has to fit what's called a random effect at area level, which is not necessarily required in ELL because you've got an enormously rich data source. So the argument, of course, among the statisticians was which method is best, or better in this case, because another one came along, which is called M-quantile. So M-quantile basically, so these two differ in the sense that one fits an area level random effect and the other fits a cluster level random effect and uses contextual variables. And the argument, as I say, about which is better is a pointless argument. My question is, what data have you got? The M-quantile one, what that does is it looks at the distribution. Looks at distribution for a particular variable. It might be expenditure, for example, and it models sections in different ways, and then it forms a structure which allows you to use census data in a very similar way, but it's basically fitting in different models to different parts of the income or expenditure distribution. A good idea, but again, it doesn't use cluster level. It doesn't use cluster level information. So that's not necessarily bad. If you don't have any cluster level information, that might be a really good technique to use. So my request is not that you remember the detail I just told you. My request is that when you're having thoughts about, or if anybody's having thoughts about doing some small area estimation, don't be persuaded by someone who says this technique is always best. It won't be. It very much requires a lot of talking about the data you've got, what type of data, what the quality of it is, and that leads on to questions of how best to model it. I think I've had my 7 minutes. All right. Well, I'll stop here. If questions either now or later are fine. A lot more, but I hope what I've said has been useful. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Haslett, for your enriching presentation and enlightening us on small area estimates. Now moving on to the question and answers. If there are any queries from the audience, I request you to be a bit succinct with your questions. And I would also like to request our virtual participants to post your questions in the group chat. Thank you. Any queries?
spoken with such clarity.
Maybe I'll let them go first. I don't see hands raised here.
Thank you, Professor, for very enlightening presentation and giving us a very comprehensive overview of this method which you have used. I would like to ask rather very generic and simple countries in South America, and this methodology. So I think the key point here is the target is to reduce the poverty, address the hunger issue and then nutrition issue and like that. So based on your study in these different countries, what do you think? What do you find rather? What sort of policy working better? In addressing this issue, and which actor, if you have to name one actor and then one kind of response which you have found working wonderfully in addressing this poverty and nutrition. Yeah, thank you.
Would you like?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think I need to start from the point that I'm a statistician. Right, so I spend a lot of time on the technical end of this and produce, working through with colleagues and people who are involved. And we work through and we produce some estimates with standard errors, and we produce some maps. And usually at that point, my project is over and I go home. I guess the question is rather deeper though, because it's a question that I have to bounce back to all of you in the room. And that is, what do you need and what are you going to do with it and how are you going to gauge how well it's worked? Now, I think one of the things, because the small area estimation is done only every 10 years, it provides very fine detail, but it's static, it's what happened then. As time goes by, there are changes. And I had a PhD student who's now in Canada. We did a lot of work on how you might update the small area estimates, even though you don't have another census. And there's a lot of work that could be done on that. But I think the point is the information is principally that it provides a really nice overview of what was happening at a particular point. But as time goes by, it gets to be an older and older overview, and that's why it needs to be redone generally. I mean, I'm not going to argue that I'm not going to put the argument you must do small area estimation, but I would put the argument that you need to think carefully about whether you can afford not to. The other way around, whether you can afford not to, because the point is that you're going to be allocating resources. You need the best information you can. There's been an enormous amount of effort put in by the NSO to collect all this data. Perhaps we could, it's a bit like squeezing a bit more juice out of the fruit. We need to get as much out of this effort as we possibly can. And the census is an enormously expensive exercise. The cost of doing the small area estimation is comparatively small. So you just need to think about whether you're going to make use of that. And I think you need to think about questions that you're asking before you go on to do the small area estimation. Without thinking about your questions, it's not going to provide such good answers.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. My question is very basic. As you said, it's a small area estimation. I just want to know how small it is. What is the sample size? How it collects the data and how it can represent or do not violate the basic statistical assumptions. Just I want to listen from you. Thank you.
When you do a sample survey, you have a sample size. But the moment you start modelling, you move into a slightly different arena. So the first point is that when you do the sample, you've got, you sample a certain number of households in every, well, I'll stay with ELACA for the moment. You sample a certain number of households in each ELACA, too few to actually get a good estimate. So what we do then is we've got information from every household in every ELACA, and what we're doing is we're modelling. So we didn't collect stunting and underweight in the census, but we did collect it in the survey. So we model the survey, we put together a regression model that says the things that actually are determining stunting in children are things like mother's age, number of people in the household, floor type, roof type, the construction of the house, ideally number of square feet per person, mother's education, almost always critical. And these things allow us to set up a model using the survey data that predicts the thing that we're interested in. We know what the answer is, but we're predicting it. So we've now got a model. And we use it. But in the census, what we've got is all those other variables. We don't have stunting, but all the other variables that we can now go to every household or every child and predict whether it's going to be stunted or not. It's only a prediction. It's not the same as collecting data. And that's why when we have to do a prediction, we have to add them all up. And what I've basically said is that it's very hard to do that adding up for fewer than 5,000 to 7,000 households and to get estimates that are accurate enough to be useful. So it's not quite sample size, but the point is that even with these types of methods, it's not the same as collecting stunting in the census. If you did that, then you wouldn't need small area estimation. So for things that are collected in the census, you don't need small area estimation. It's for things that you couldn't collect in the census. Because the real problem with censuses is you go to every household, but you cannot possibly ask a questionnaire that's as long as a living standard survey questionnaire. You just can't do it. So what we're doing is we're allocating resources for data collection, and then we also need to think about allocating resources for more detailed analysis. Right. So the standard things that are produced by official statisticians, are excellent material on what's coming out of sample surveys. This is taking it a step further and modelling it and linking it to the census. And by linking it to the census, we're able to get estimates at a final level that would have been possible using the survey alone. Well, if the modeling's any good. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it's but I understand now.
Okay, no, thank you.
So in that sense, we need some kind of original data set to predict the estimated, right?
We need a census or the equivalent. I mean, so I've worked in places where we've been working with administrative data. I mean, I'm currently working, well, for WFP, as it turns out, in Indonesia. And that's one of the issues is whether certain types of administrative data may be useful. And this is particularly so because when they tried to do the 2020 census, they got caught up in COVID. They shortened the number of questions, many fewer questions, and also they were relying heavily on well, I think around about a half of what they would have collected in the census. They're having to go back to administrative data and try and construct a census from the administrative data. So you can start to see that it's not necessarily a census. I like censuses because they're nice and clean and tidy and we know what we're talking about. Administrative data is much more difficult. But I mean, it's not restricting it to one data source. What we're looking at is surveys on the one hand, we collect the variable that we're interested in, and data sources which are comprehensive in terms of number of people, but don't collect the variable that we're interested in. And what we're doing is statistical modelling to tie those two together to come up with estimates that are better than we could get out of the survey.
पहिला Dr. Thabuna.
Thank you, Professor. Very enlightening presentation. My name is Karan Thabuna, and I think you have answered your later part of the previous question. Since census always been taken in 10 years, so you said after maybe 3, 4, 5 years, the census data will reduce the information gradually. So basically, you said, okay, we need to have overwhelming information. If not census, then other estimation is fine. So this is what you refer, like if we don't have census data, then what kind of data that resembles the census data? This is the question.
Okay. Well, the first thing is there are techniques. Maris Sidra, who I mentioned, Maris did her PhD on the situation where you have a census and a survey, you do small area estimation, time passes, you still don't have another census, but you've got a repeat of the survey. Can you update the small area estimates? So that was her PhD thesis. She wrote a very good paper, and that's one possibility. The other possibilities are that I don't know in full the situation in Nepal. Perhaps I could talk a little bit about Indonesia for the moment. So in Indonesia, there are various administrative databases. There's actually administrative data on, well, I can't assess quality. It's I'm not saying the quality is poor, I just don't know. But the point is they've got administrative data on everybody, and it keeps getting updated. So in a sense, that's very like a census. So yes, there are other sources of data, and they're usually administrative. So they're not really collected for the same reasons as the census, and they're often difficult to work with for exactly that reason. But there are potential for using administrative databases instead. And in fact, I've done some work in New Zealand on that. We're looking at unemployment, and what we have is we've got an unemployment survey based on the International Labour Organisation's definitions. And what we've also got are the number of people who are registered unemployed. And the question is, what's the relationship between them? So we know for everybody in the country whether they're registered unemployed or not, but we don't know whether they're unemployed under an ILO definition. So that database of who are registered unemployed, it changes daily. So that's another problem with administrative data. It changes a lot, and you've got basically got to decide this is the time point. But yeah, I mean, it's still feasible to use other data sources. And I think the major exercise that we do, and Jeff and I have been doing this project, one of the things we've always asked for, and fortunately had accepted, is the idea that the first step is a feasibility study. Now, I mean, I know that when we came back from Nepal the second time, people said, but it is feasible, you did it last time. But that's not the point. I think the point is about a feasibility study is you don't have to spend as much money, and you can assess all the different possible data sources. You can have some sensible discussion about what to do before you get on with doing some complicated statistical modelling. You can do some initial stuff, but I think it's always worth spending time finding out what your data sources are and what's possible to use, what the quality of them is, what year they were collected in, what complications there were with the data collection. All of those things are really, really useful background.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
We have a query from the virtual audience. Jean Paul, VAM officer at WFP Rwanda country office, is asking, can you please share, if possible, detailed guidances, methodologies for all the 3 types of SAE?
Yeah, sort of. Well, I hesitate to mention something I've done myself, but I think the paper that Suman Kantidas and I wrote and that went into the International Statistical Review would provide a useful background on the 3 different methods. I mean, I think it'd be useful to know that the question is intent. Do they wish to do a PhD in small area estimation, or do they want to do small area estimation in Rwanda? They're different problems. So in the first, it's the detail. I mean, is it in detail, technical detail, or is it some of the practicalities that are interesting?
Maybe we could point to some literature.
Yeah, sure. No, I can do that afterwards. Sure.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Devendra Karanjit, and I'm from NSO, Household Survey Section. My question is a bit simple. I mean, in Nepal, we have done this small area estimation of this poverty and everything, I think, three times. But every time, the political boundaries of different small areas are changing every time, and also the sample design are changing. In this context, are the results obtained from different small area estimation over different period of time comparable? How to convince if they are not comparable, or how to convince if they are really comparable? Thank you.
An excellent question. I think the first point is that the way these methods work is that for every household or for every child, you have a prediction. How you aggregate those up is your choice. Changes of administrative boundaries, or if you were to go back to the data, the prediction data, you could change your boundaries, that wouldn't be any problem. I think in practice though, 10 years is a long time. And I couldn't quite tell you where the data sets are from 10 years ago in order to do this for changed administrative boundaries. So it can be done in principle, but I think it requires careful looking after data for long periods and then redefinition of the areas that you want, change administrative boundaries, and then you could simply take the results that have come through the predictions at individual or household level, and you could reassign them to different areas. That's not a problem in principle. I think it's a problem in practice. I sort of moved off, I think, into the change of survey design in itself is not a problem, because when you're doing the modelling, you should ideally not just model using standard regression software, you should model using sample survey software that does regression in the sample survey context. So it will look after things like stratification and clustering and unequal weighting and all of those sorts of things when you do that initial modelling on the survey data. So I think even last time we were here, Jeff and I were here, I mean, we did work on the demographic health survey. So DHS, we looked at the living standards survey, we looked at a number of different possible data sources. In every case, you need to adjust your analysis for the design, but the fact that the designs are different is not in itself a major problem. And changes in design, even to something like NLSS, isn't really the issue, because if you're doing a small area estimation, if you're doing it now, you'll be using the information from the NLS from now, use the design from now. What happened historically is not quite so important. I think the thing is that you're asking kind of at a level of detail that's very, very important, but when you come out and you're looking at it, and you're looking at the maps, or you're looking at the results, questions about change of design of survey are critically important up to the point where you've got the results, and then everyone wants to forget about that. And you can forget about that, you've got the results, but you certainly need to take care of it while you're getting the results out and while you're doing the modelling. Does that answer the question?
They are comparable.
Sorry?
They are.
Okay. Oh, comparable. Yeah, no, that's right. They're comparable. Yeah, I think the thing is, if you've got a change of administrative boundaries, you've obviously got slight complications. But I think the other point is that, and I remember saying this to WFP many times, in Nepal, you're going to get estimates for stunting, for example, at ELACA level. There's still 5,000 households out there, and only some of them are going to have stunted children. you still need something that actually finds those children and focuses on them as individuals, not as the sea liker deserves resources and this one doesn't. So it's really a I think the work for food program was an example of that. I mean, you come up with programs that are going to attract or encourage the sort of people who need the resources to come and get the resources, and discourage people who don't need them from turning up. You know, social pressures, various other things can be useful. I'm sure. Well, we have two people in the room who know far more about this world. Krishna's just gone out, but you know, I mean, the point is that there are a whole lot of programs that you have that try and deal with this problem. But so the idea of even though it's a small area level, the idea of all of this is to give you an overview, a complete overview of what's happening in the whole country. It's not to tell you what's happening in a particular ilaka or administrative area.
Thank you very much, Professor. And thank you everyone for your queries. They were indeed very thoughtful. After this engaging session, I would now like to call upon Dr. Hemraj Regmi, the Deputy Chief Statistician of the National Statistics Office, Nepal, for his remarks.
Thank you very much. Respected Professor Stephen, the distinguished President, Executive Director, and members of the NDRI, colleagues from different UN agencies, government departments, and my colleagues from National Statistics Office, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Professor Haslett, for this presentation on the small area estimation.
अहिले चाहिँ मेरो म्युट भयो कि आवाजै आएन त आवाज पनि नआउनु त पर्छ स्टार्ट भिडियो छैन यहाँबाट कसरी हेर्ने त्यो त्यो भोल्युम म्युट भयो कि के हो त्यसले त म कहाँ जाने अन्त यो मैले यसो पठाउनु सकिनँ ल यसो कसैले बोलिरहेको छ मैले शङ्कर बोलिरहेको हो मेरोमा आएन के यो यसरी पनि आउँदैन साउन्डै के छैन त्यस्तो आउनु पर्ने
Population census. The type of the houses has been also collected from the population census, and if we can combine those information with this income and expenses, which is coming from the latest living standard survey, then I assume that we will be able to publish the small area estimation at the municipality level, at least 753 municipality level, which will on planning, monitoring, and evaluating the policies related with the poverty, the well-being, and then other economic indicators. We have that plan, and then but we are looking for resources. Then once these resources will be available, and then once these living standard survey data will be published, then maybe we can start the initiative within this year. That's the tentative plan. We are discussing with the different development partners as well in this initiative, and then Professor Stephen has already highlighted that he has a very wealth of experiences working in Nepal as well as many other countries. We will be grateful in receiving his assistance as well, but guided by the resources and by the government decisions. With this, I congratulate Professor for coming far from New Zealand, no? Very far from New Zealand on his own, no? He is here on his personal visit on his own and giving this wonderful the presentation on his malaria estimation, which will help the statistical community, the data users here in Nepal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy. Your wise words. Moving on, I would now like to call upon Dr. Sridhar Thapa, a VAM officer at World Food Programme, for his remarks.
Thank you very much for this. So first of all, I'd like to thank NTRI for this inviting this opportunity and providing some remarks on this seminar that our professor that is presented despite his personal visit in Nepal. So I think this is good opportunity also to express our interest, also our views on that. As you know, I mean, also Krishna Pahari, I mean, he's also part of WFE, and in 2004 also he was fully engaged and overall lead this small area estimation with in partnership with other agencies. And in 2014, that our colleagues and friends from Central Bureau, the former Central Bureau of Statistics, and also other government officials. And also we have been very intensively working together and to produce this small area estimation. So this is the, I think, right time to discuss, and it's very timely that the NDRI they organized this meeting. I think it's really right time. As a WFE, and we have the fully involved in 2004 and 2014. And also you can see the importance, like also I participate with our head of program also to participate and to listen to how it is important. Definitely WFE is interested to be a part of this. And the data, I think, is what our Dr. Redmishari mentioned, like this right time and also high demand in the data, especially for poverty, food insecurity, nutrition indicator in terms of the SDG 1 and 2 indicator, that is everyone is looking at that part also. Also in Nepal, we have also this right to food sovereignty act, and also everyone should have the right to have a food secure. In that sense also we need also information who are the food secure, how many percentages are there, what, and how we can do this. I think this smaller estimation findings and reports can support to design, also identify the people are poor or are food insecure, what sort of protection or safety net modality we have to develop for this. I think this sort of requirement, especially in the local level at the Palika, the municipal level, is very required. So we have also internal discussion also in our WFE. Also we are thinking how we can go proceed, but it was on the internal. And also this morning also I had also discussion with other UN agencies, like this meeting also we should participate. Also especially FAO team also, because there is also another indicator like the SDG 2.1.2 indicator, like food FIES, food insecurity express scale also, because that indicator was in the past. Maybe this time as a SDG indicator, maybe we can include that indicator. Maybe there are a lot of opportunities also. Lot of what Register mentioned, CB has a lot of, can look at the other indicator that is demanded, that is required for the policy informed program design and other also different targeting for the program design of this thing. So I think it's the right time, and thank you. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. And most of things you have already covered. I am not talking about all things, but it was already still here. We have been a very long time with you, and thank you for your visit in Nepal. I hope you enjoy in Nepal, and also you presented. But the last time you invited, we came with very tight schedule, like each and every hour you have time to meeting with this and working with this, discussion with this, because the small area also where what they produce also. We had also 3 days workshop in Dhulikhel also. We joined in there, our CBS colleagues are there. Also we discussed on the results also, how that results is, whether that results is some sort of outliers or not. I will discuss with the people who knows the context, who knows the situation. And so there was a series of discussion after even filing the result, so that the result is more comparable, acceptable, also the accurate, So despite maybe there might have some errors in the modeling, I mean, it's not like 100%. So how we can minimize that error and produce the result as better, as accurate as possible. So this set of activity we have done in the past in 2014. Finally, I think we have also the 2 reports already there. So hopefully, I think it's right time, and even I had very brief discussion, very short discussion with the regulator also. Maybe how we can these things. I think it's up to the, I mean, it's the government, because we are in the development agencies, and we are always ready to whatever level of our, based on our knowledge, based on our funding available, and we are ready to any sort of cooperation, any sort of participate to be, contribute to be a part of this exercise. So we are always open and happy to be this. And that's, I think it's all from my side and our side. Thank you very much for this again. So I'll stay there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thapa, for your thoughtful words. Now, allow me to call upon Dr. Krishna Pahari, founding member and President of NDRI, for his remarks as
Dhanyavad. Thank you very much. Namaste, everybody. I make my points better. First of all, I would like to, because in some way I may be called senior, other way I'm older, getting older. So I like stories. Even if I share my stories, I have so many things to share as stories. So going back to 20 years ago, it's not coming. Anyway, years ago, we were 7 people with a vision to initiate something at the public level, to initiate an organization which can be the center of excellence, which can serve as a think tank to support policy making in the country based on evidence, on sound research and studies. So 2 of those are present here physically, Dr. Khatibara and myself. And out of 7, 5 are still in Nepal, 2 are abroad. So that was 20 years ago. We started in the very modest beginning. We had nothing. We started basically from scratch. But now, after 20 years, I think we are well recognized as one of the leading think tanks in Nepal. 23 members who have expertise in many different fields. We have 50 associated experts all across the country who work on this basis. So, also elected as a president just few weeks ago. That's why I have to tell something about NDRI. And you have to know as well, because Haile is a good friend of mine. We work in WFP together in South Sudan. As I think one of our primary goals is national capacity. I think national capacity is developed. The government capacity as well as the public sector, civil society. It says there is an internet. Anyway, now we have NDRI covers broad range of issues on contemporary and emerging issues that are relevant to the society. So we cover almost everything, from public health to food security, nutrition, water resources, energy, you name it. We don't cover very hardcore science or engineering, but we cover broader issues that affect our society at large. So these are all into 4 different categories. One is the livelihood and food security and growth, and the other is cutting programs like and we have, I think there's some internet issue here. Anyway, that's very glad over last 20 years. Related issues. For example, we released a very important report on migration and its implications on food security. particularly looking at the people in the Karnali region who go to India for seasonal migration to manage their food needs. This became a very important document that guided government's program in that region. Similarly, in 2010, together with WFP, NDRI was involved in producing the first food security atlas of Nepal. Actually, a lot of the information is borrowed from Professor Haslett's work. So when I was still with NDRI, because of the very interesting work Professor Haslett was doing with WFP, then since May 2005, I also joined WFP as so-called GIS advisor. I was looking at the maps, yeah? So the beautiful maps he presented from the past, probably drawn by me. Okay, but anyway, that provided me a lot of opportunity to learn small area estimates, how useful it is. Because maps are meaningless, they can be even deceptive. They are not content you present in the map is not correct. Yeah. So that's how I became a student of not a formal student. I'm not so intelligent to be a student, but that's how I learned about small area estimates. That was first time done in Nepal in 2005-06. There is the first time we ever had our data indicators at the sub-district level. That was immensely useful for our planning. I remember at that time, once I got a call from the Minister of Finance, former Finance Minister, Bharat Mohan Adhikari. I was so impressed with him. I rarely find such politicians who are so studious. He asked for that publication so that he could make use in the policy making. Yeah. So that way, and then later, I think in 2014-15, there was another small area estimates done in Nepal, and we greatly benefited from Steve's work in several countries. When I was in Pakistan, we had a chance to work together, and in South Sudan. There have been challenges in implementing SAE, which is very difficult to learn in 1 hour lecture. That's why we need experts like Professor Haslett. But on the other hand, I have a very good news to tell you. When he was here, he and another colleague, Jeff, they worked together with the then CBS, now Minnesota. I'm so happy to see Uttam Madasar. He was the Deputy Director General at that time. He worked very closely with our team of colleagues at the CBS. And some of them learned so well. Is also one of them. And one of the colleagues, Ranwari Goire, for example, after that, he took a temporary job in Bangkok at the Asian Institute of Technology. And he was actually supporting small area estimates in 10 or 12 countries across Southeast Asia. Wonderful. And then he came back to the country. He's here now, not in the hall. Unfortunately, he could not make it because he's flying from Nepalganj and his flight was delayed. That's why this national capacity is very important. Yeah, so I really appreciate your contribution on this. The other thing I'd like to tell you is that the value of information is so important in making progress. For example, Nepal has made significant progress towards food security. You can see from the graph, for example. In terms of zero hunger index, we are now better off than our neighboring countries like India or Pakistan, even though they may be richer by economic growth, but we are better off in terms of reducing hunger. And this is because of the efforts by the government. There are so many factors contributing to this. Even though we are very vulnerable, that's another side of the story. And then NDRI, because we have done so many studies in the past, I think we also had a small contribution towards small positive contribution in this direction. For example, so many studies we did. I only listed few ones. There was Food Security Atlas in 2010 together with WFP, and then an updated one in 2019. Now we are working on the new publication we call Nepal's Journey Towards Zero Hunger, State of Food Security in 2023, which will be hopefully published in next few months. For this were eagerly waiting the release of the NLSS, which we like to incorporate. And then the journey continues because 2030 is there. So we cannot stop, unfortunately. So hopefully, together with our government colleagues and development partners, we can make substantial progress in this direction. So coming to the value of small area estimates. So having these indicators or estimates at lower level is extremely useful for a rational resource allocation, which was the case in the food security atlas, for example. We can see these different indicators even below the district level. So we can use this information for more fair resource allocation. Now it's even more important because we have to achieve these sustainable development goals, including zero hunger. Not only zero hunger, it can be used for a range of issues, as Steve mentioned, and because we have a new constitution, we have republic, all these political changes, people have a lot of aspiration for prosperity. We have to deliver. In order to deliver that, we need better information. Yeah, that's why we have more value. So that is why I believe Dr. Regmi also mentioned it is the right time for a new small area estimates with fresh data. Right? So in this direction, I hope we can work together. If there is any way we could contribute to this process, if we could reach this process, whatever way we could, we'll be very happy from NDRI. Thank you very much. Thank you. Steve, would you mind coming here? Just to wrap up. Things section on it. Actually, sort of अनुहार देखेपछि अलि इन्टरेक्सन राम्रो हुन्छ. Okay, one good thing today is that we have colleagues representing civil society, our development partners, including UN organizations and some donor organizations. We have academia and civil society, and of course the government institutions, including NSO, Ministry of Agriculture, and we have also the Joint Secretary from the National Planning Commission. Thank you, sir, for coming today. I think when it comes to the well-being of the society, we may be working in different corners and different sectors, but when it comes to the overall well-being of our society, we should be on one page. So in that process, I would welcome any thoughts on how we go further from here. Anyone? Sir, absolutely. Would you like to share something? No? Particularly, sir. Please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pahari, for letting us know that today we have a very good representation here from the government as well as the research organization and the development partners and like that. So particularly I would just like to point out that because from the government side, okay, sometimes we are confused in NDRI. Okay, we do have some savings, we do have some our internal research budget, so we have difficulty in allocating that. I mean, what set up our research would really help the government or let's say the development partner, right? For example, if you talk about this, poverty and nutrition, this sector or any other sector. So I would like to listen from the some ideas from the government that what sort of research would really be useful, and because it's already 20 years, I would say, and then I mean especially our leaders, political leaders, what is their kind of craving? What do they want when it is the making the policy or passing a policy in the parliament, or I mean maybe they're making some budget, next year budget or any other planning thing. What is really needed in Nepal from your side? Really wonderful. I think to go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Industry. So I feel privileged to be here. As a year student, very good to see your presentation and learn from you about Nepal, but more from you than I know. I know very little in the poverty area, though. From this research, your findings would be about comparative study of Bangladesh, Philippines, Cambodia, and Nepal. There is a certain threshold from the UNDP to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal targets. We are in the midway, already so 2024, and only 6 years left, I think. So what would be the outcome of your research would help to tends to get that goal more effectively? What would you suggest to the Nepal government to take steps more effectively? First, what would be the challenges to achieve those goals? And what would be your contribution? Thank you so much.
I feel like I can't quite answer the question, but I will say one thing. I mean, I'm not directly involved with any implementation. What I am involved with is finding good measures to test whether we've actually made progress and the extent to which progress has been made, and providing fine level detail about what might be done next. So it's really about improving the debate and improving the information that's available for that debate and that discussion, and avoiding having information that might help avoid wasting resources. So I think it's not that I can bring the goals closer, it's that I can provide information that helps measure how close we've got.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I made a mistake earlier. We have Dr. Harisharma Neopani from PRI, sorry, my planning commission. Actually, Policy Research Institute is officially the government's think tank in Nepal, which helps support the government in framing policies through research. Just yesterday, I was very happy to attend a program on the agricultural fallow land. What to do about it? Yeah, there's some discourse on this from PRI. So we're so happy to have you, sir, today. If you have something to share, I will be very happy to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Let me allow to speak in Nepali. As you know, here we are most of in the place, so I would like to speak in Nepali. Please translate the main points if you need necessary. Thank you very much. मलाई यस कार्यक्रममा बोलाएर सहभागी हुने मौका दिनुभएकोमा एनडीआरआईलाई म धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। मुख्य गरी प्रोफेसर हेसलको प्रेजेन्टेसन राम्रो थियो र मलाई स्मल एरिया एस्टिमेसनको बारेमा जानकारी भएको हुनाले मैले त्यति धेरै प्रश्नहरू राखिनँ म अर्थशास्त्रको विद्यार्थी पनि हुँ र मैले इकोनोमेट्रिक्स प्रयोग पनि गर्ने गर्दछु। त्यसो भएको हुनाले त्यतातिर मैले केही गरेन। मुख्य गरी नीति अनुसन्धान प्रतिष्ठानले हामीले एज सरकारको थिङ्क ट्याङ्कको रूपबाट सरकारको चाहिँ थिङ्क ट्याङ्कको रूपबाट काम गर्छौँ। काम गर्दाखेरि हाम्रा काम गर्ने विभिन्न विधिहरू छन् र तपाईँले हिजो सहभागी हुनुभएको जमिनको खण्डीकरणका बाँझो जमिनको उपयोग सम्बन्धी त्यो एउटा सार्वजनिक नीति संवाद थियो। हामीले सार्वजनिक नीति संवादलाई डेटा विशेष गरी क्वालिटेटिभ डेटा युजको टुलको रूपबाट पनि हेर्छौँ र यसमा हामीले विशेष गरी सबै खाले सरकारवालाहरूलाई जम्मा गरेर भेला गर्ने भएको हुनाले सबैको आवाज आउने एउटा माध्यमको रूपबाट लिएका छौँ र मुख्य गरी हामीले रिसर्च टपिकहरू आइडेन्टिफाई गर्दाखेरि हामीले धेरै जसो रिसर्च टपिकहरू नेपाल सरकारका सम्बन्धित मन्त्रालयहरू वा विभाग तथा तिनका निकायहरूबाट लिने गर्छौँ र त्यसमध्येमा हामीले गर्ने अनुसन्धानको 70% जति अनुसन्धानहरू नेपाल सरकारले उपलब्ध गराएका विषयमा हामीले गर्ने गर्छौँ भने हामी 30% चाहिँ समसामयिक विषय कन्टेम्पोरेरी इस्युजहरूमा पनि हामीले गर्ने गरेका छौँ र त्यही सन्दर्भमा यहाँहरूले भर्खरै एउटा गाँजाको रिपोर्ट पनि हामीले गाँजाको वैधानिकरण सम्बन्धी एउटा रिपोर्ट पनि आएको छ र हामीले प्रधानमन्त्री कृषि आधुनिकरण आयोजनाको धान सुपर जोनको पनि हामीले गरेका छौँ यतातिर र यहाँले एउटा हाम्रो वेबसाइटमा जानुभयो भने हामीले एउटा बहस पत्र भनेर प्रकाशन गरेका छौँ। विशेष गरी यो खाद्य सुरक्षा र खाद्यसित सम्बन्धित त्यस पब्लिकेसनको नाम चाहिँ बदलिँदो परिवेशमा खाद्य सुरक्षा र राष्ट्रिय सुरक्षा रहेको छ र हामीले खाद्य सुरक्षालाई राष्ट्रिय सुरक्षासँग जोडेर त्यो एउटा बहस पत्र हामीले निकालेका छौँ। यस्तै गरी रुस युक्रेन युद्धपछि विशेष गरी वातावरण लगायतका आर्थिकदेखि लिएर विभिन्न क्षेत्रमा कस्तो प्रभाव पर्छ भन्ने विषयमा पनि यहाँहरूले हाम्रो वेबसाइटबाट विशेष प्रतिवेदन प्राप्त गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ र हाम्रा विशेष गरी अलि कोही चाहिँ माइक्रो लेभलको अनुसन्धान हुन्छ भने धेरै जसो अलि म्याक्रो र पोलिसी लेभलको अनुसन्धान गर्ने गरेका छौँ र सामान्यतया पोलिसीमा अनुसन्धान गर्दाखेरि माइक्रोभन्दा धेरै म्याक्रो लेभलको इस्युहरूले माइक्रो लेभलको इस्युहरूलाई रहेछ र हामीले विशेष गरी सरकारको चाहना मुताबिक नै अनुसन्धान गर्ने भएको हुनाले हामीले धेरै पर जाँदैनौँ। यसपालि पनि हामीले विभिन्न प्रधानमन्त्री कार्यालयदेखि लिएर विभिन्न मन्त्रालयबाट आएका अनुसन्धानहरू हामी जाइरहेका छौँ। अब केही दिनमा हामीले यो सामाजिक सुरक्षा सम्बन्धी प्रतिवेदन चाहिँ अहिले कम्पोजमा छ, पब्लिस हुँदैछ र स्टार्टअप बिजनेसको पनि हामीले एउटा पब्लिस भइसकेको छ। यहाँहरूले निःशुल्क प्राप्त त्यसलाई शुल्क तिर्नु पर्दैन। हाम्रो वेबसाइटबाट डिजिटल पनि डाउनलोड गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ होइन। अब कतिपय अब हार्ड कपी यहाँलाई चाहियो भने हाम्रो अफिसमा आउनु भने पाउन सक्नुहुन्छ। मुख्य गरी अब म पिआरएको बारेमा छोटो 1 मिनट धेरै लामो बोल्नु पनि राम्रो हुँदैन, 1 मिनट जति बोल्नु। हामी पिआरआई चाहिँ विशेष गरी एउटा बोर्डबाट सञ्चालित भएको संस्था हो र हामीलाई नेपाल सरकारले पनि अनुसन्धान गर्नलाई कुनै प्रकारको हस्तक्षेप गर्ने यसो गर्नुहोस् नगर्नु भन्नु हामी एक प्रकारको स्वतन्त्र छौँ अनुसन्धानको लागि। त्यसो भएको हुनाले हामीले सरकारलाई सुझाव दिन्छौँ। मुख्य गरी हाम्रो काम चाहिँ 3 भागमा बाँडिन्छ। धेरै जसो हामीले के भने मन्त्रालयहरू अथवा विभागहरूले तयार गरेका नीतिहरू मस्यौदा नीतिहरूमा चाहिँ पृष्ठपोषण गर्ने गर्छौँ हामीले। त्यो अहिलेसम्म हामीले सङ्घीय मन्त्रालयहरूबाट आएका 10 भन्दा बढी मस्यौदा नीतिहरूमाथि पृष्ठपोषण गरेका छौँ। त्यो नीतिहरू त्यसपछि गइसकेपछि मन्त्रालयहरूले हामीले यसमा चाहिँ 3-4 वटा विधि अप्नाउँछौँ मस्यौदा नीतिलाई समीक्षा गर्दाखेरि। पहिला हामी सार्वजनिकरण गर्छौँ। यहाँहरूले हाम्रो वेबसाइटमा जानुभयो भने भेटाइरहनुहुन्छ। त्यसमा चाहिँ यहाँहरूले स्वतन्त्र रूपबाट त्यो नीतिमाथि आफ्नो विचार दिनुभयो भने हामीलाई हामीले हाम्रो लागि धन्यवादको पात्र गर्नुहुनेछ। दोस्रो हामीले हामीसँग भएको रोस्टरमा विज्ञहरूको लिस्ट छ र सम्बन्धित विषयसित सम्बन्धित व्यक्तिहरूलाई हामीले मेल गरेर पठाउने गर्छौँ र तेस्रो हामीले कम्तीमा पनि 2 जना विषयसँग सम्बन्धित विज्ञसँग समीक्षा गराउँछौँ। चौथो हामी पोलिसी रिसर्च इन्स्टिच्युटभित्रै भएका विज्ञहरूबाट हामी समीक्षा गर्छौँ। र पाँचौँ हिजो तपाईँले पार्टिसिपेट गर्नुभएको सार्वजनिक नीति संवाद भनेर हामीले नाम राखेका छौँ। त्यसमार्फत समीक्षा गरिसकेपछि त्यसको सार र यहाँहरू कसैले त्यसमा लिखित रूपबाट सुझाव दिनुभयो भने त्यो सुझाव पत्र सहित सँगै सङ्कलन राखेर हामीले सम्बन्धित मन्त्रालयमा हामीले पठाउने गरेका छौँ। र हामीले दिएको मस्यौदाको पृष्ठपोषणका आधारबाट कतिपय नीतिहरू आएका पनि छन् र त्यसमा समावेश भएको पनि छ। सरकारलाई हामीले एउटा यो मस्यौदा नीतिमा समीक्षा गरेर पृष्ठपोषण गर्ने एउटा काम छ भने अर्को वर्तमान अवस्थामा कार्यान्वयन भएका नीतिहरू विशेष गरी केही पुराना नीतिहरूको बारेमा हामी समीक्षा गर्छौँ। त्यसको अनुसन्धान बारेमा मैले पहिले नै भनिसकेँ। हामीसँग 5 नीति अध्ययन केन्द्रहरू छन्। हामी अनुसन्धान अन्तर्गत एउटा अनुसन्धान विभाग अन्तर्गत 5वटा नीति अनुसन्धान केन्द्र छन्। पहिलो आर्थिक विकासको पूर्वाधार रहेको छ। दोस्रो सुशासन र सङ्घीय मामिला रहेको छ। तेस्रो सामाजिक तथा कानुनी मामिला भन्छौँ हामी। त्यसमा चाहिँ शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, रोजगार र सामाजिक शिक्षाको विषय हेर्छौँ। चौथो राष्ट्रिय हित र अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय सम्बन्ध र पाँचौँ विज्ञान प्रविधि र प्राकृतिक स्रोत व्यवस्थापनसित सम्बन्धित रहेको छ। हामीलाई संविधानको धारा 51को अनुसारको नीतिगत उसमा अनुसन्धान गर्ने दायरा भएको हुनाले हाम्रो क्षेत्र व्यापक छ। तर अब अहिले हामी भर्खरै सुरुवात गरेका छौँ। धेरै वर्ष पनि भएको छैन। संस्थाको लेखको करिब 5 वर्ष मात्रै हुन लाग्यो। करिब 70वटा डकुमेन्टहरू यहाँले भेटाउन सक्नुहुन्छ हाम्रो वेबसाइटमा। र हामीसँग चाहिँ डिजिटल एसेस म्यानेजमेन्ट सिस्टम अन्तर्गत करिब 17,000भन्दा यो नीतिसित सम्बन्धित डकुमेन्टहरू डिजिटल डकुमेन्टहरू ड्याब सिस्टममा हामीले राखेका छौँ। यहाँहरूले त्यसलाई युज गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ आवश्यक भएको खण्डमा। अब मलाई यहाँ बोल्ने मौका दिनु हो, यसको लागि म पुनः एनडिआरलाई धन्यवाद दिन्छु। मेरो भनाइ यहीँ राख्छु। थोरै भानु भयो, क्षमा गर्नु होला। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद सर, यो एकदमै उपयोगी थियो। वास्तवमा अब म अङ्ग्रेजीमा स्विच गरेँ। Actually, at NDRI, we were so happy when the PRI was established. When we set up NDRI in 2004, we partly got our inspiration in foreign countries where there were think tanks providing some policy direction to the government or general public at large based on rigorous research and studies. But we didn't see any such thing in Nepal. So that's why we set up this one. So we were always thinking that it would be good to have official governments, official think tank which could support the government. So when it was established some 6 or 7 years ago, we were so happy about it, and we are so happy to see the number of activities you are doing, and it's quite impressive. So thank you very much for your input. So any other thoughts? Actually, you are welcome to sit here. I'm sorry. I'm okay. I'm not so good in formalities, please.
No. Thanks, Krishna. So, as WFP, we also collect at least twice per year a nationally representative household survey, which looks at the food security, nutrition, and agricultural production here in Nepal. And I'm really happy to see that we're also planning to do a small area estimate as also presented by Professor Stefan. And to reiterate the fact that WFP will be extremely happy to collaborate with the National Statistics Office, NDRI, and the relevant partners, because there is a huge expectation on WFP on behalf of the humanitarian and development partners to produce such kind of a detailed and granular level of information. And
we have, the census data, we have the national living standard survey, and so much more, including WFP's household level assessments that we do at least twice per year. And we all know that there are a range of, social protection oriented programs here in Nepal. So the needs sometimes may not match with the resources available. So if you have such level of detailed data, you use this information to critically target and prioritize the resources to channel it to the most needy ones. And moreover, as WFP, we were working with the National Statistics Office and the Nepal Rashtra Bank to come up with what we call the cost of the diet. So the cost of the diet, like how much a highly nutritious food costs in the different settings, in the terai, in the hills, and in the mountain regions. So if we have such kind of granular level information, then we use it, to inform the design of policies and programs by both the development partners and mainly the government. So I cannot stress more on the importance of the small area estimates, so that we use them as a critical source of information to design and implement our programs. And with this, also to reiterate WFP's readiness to collaborate with NDRI, the National Statistics Office, and on the relevant partners to be part of updating the small area estimates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heidi. The WFP's, the value of SAE for WFP cannot be overestimated. That's why today I circulated this message here in Africa. I don't know if John Paul is still, maybe he's online from Rwanda. I know him, he's a very good friend of mine, excellent BAM officer. I hope this, our colleagues across the world, no matter which organization they work for, they can benefit from this technique for the betterment of their societies at large. Thank you, Heidi. Please, sir.
My name is Pankaj Kerala, representing CIMIC. And from CIMIC, what we are doing is actually there is one project that is CISA Ukraine project that is basically designed for how Ukraine and the Russia war has affected agriculture. Farmers and the poor consumers of Nepal. So the informations that might be affected by the crisis is the kind of things, as well as we are also different types of shocks, not only the Ukraine Russia shocks, but also like recent year El Nino is predicted in Nepal. So these kind of shocks and how these small shocks are actually distributed in the western part of the Nepal. So we are collecting the data at the monthly level, but obviously we are actually collecting some of the data which is not statistically representative. But when you say the small area technique, these estimates, maybe that can be useful to correctly, exploit the already collected data and utilized for to collect the information that directly or indirectly affect the nutrition, health, and the poverty. This is what we are doing as CIMIC, IFRI, and the IIDS, which is also one think tank in Nepal. And we are, on the monthly level, we are preparing one agriculture report that actually say how these things are changing and what could be the implications. And additionally, we are also planning for the dashboard that inform the policymakers how things are changing, how the prices are and the other variables are changing, and how that might affect nutrition and the poverty at the large. And we are also thinking to collaborate with the WFP in this regard So maybe the small area estimates, the procedure, if we can get somehow how to do it, it can help us because we are collecting a very small size. And as you said, the small size can also be a representative. That is a wonderful knowledge for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Koirala. हाम्रो उत्तम मल्ल सरले I'm so happy to see you, sir, today.
Well, I first of all would like to thank NDRI for giving me an opportunity to participate in the seminar. Actually, I could have asked earlier itself to Professor Haslett. So, probably it has already been 10 years since I was retired from NSO. So I'm not very much updated about what is happening there. But looking at the presentation of Haslett, naturally there raises some questions, particularly on quality of estimates. So when we work in census or surveys, our concerns always lies under quality. And both census and surveys, both are subject to some kind of errors. So when you do some kind of the small area estimates, then naturally it inherits the error occurred in census and surveys as well. So yeah, in this context, my questions to Haslett again, that how far, whether you have assessed the quality of small area estimates, and can you attribute that to the survey or census or both? So if you can explain about that, I appreciate Professor Haslett. Thank you.
As expected, a very good question. As expected, a very good question. I think one of the, first of all, data quality is critical. I don't mean just for small area estimation, I mean for any statistical agency. And I think this is why so much effort's put into national sample surveys, why so much effort's put into censuses, even between census years, why there are censuses that are not population censuses. That whole structure is a critical and very important structure in official statistics. And it underpins many important decisions that need to be made by government. I think small area estimation is subtly different, and Krishna tells me I can say some technical things, so I'll do that just for a moment. One of the issues that's come up in Indonesia, and it's not the first country to come up with this, is the question of whether small area estimates should be official statistics. What's quite interesting is in the United States, where they've got a SAPI, which is basically about poverty, and they've been using small area estimates for 20 or more years. They still do not call them official statistics, despite the quality of the US data and despite the quality of the modelling. And the reason for this is principally that I started, I need to tell a story, one of Krishna's little stories perhaps. When I started working in official statistics was in the late 1970s. And I was put into a section designing sample surveys because I was working for what's now Statistics New Zealand. And any suggestion that a model should be used for anything, rather statistical modelling should be used for anything, is viewed as used for time series, for seasonal adjustment. Designers is, should we use models which is based on probabilities of selection? And he asked him how he proportional to size and why would he use stratification, and he didn't find very helpful. So I think at the back, my conclusion after time is at the back of designing a sample survey, it's design based. You know, you can avoid criticism, political criticisms with bias, all of that. But still, someone who designs a sample survey has a structure in their head they use to decide whether to stratify or whether to use PPS or whatever they decide to do. So I don't think the escape from models is complete. But I quite understand that in official statistics, you don't want to be introducing models where statistical models where you don't have them. So on the what side, there's an ambivalence in just about every government statistical agency internationally. On the one hand, they would like more detailed estimates, and on the other, they prefer not to use models, statistical models. And I think that's really where small area estimation comes in. That question has to be resolved to some extent. What happens in many countries is they call small area estimates, they call them experimental series, or they give them some other name, because they're not, the worry is that the model may not be good enough, that something the results are not as defendable as straight sample surveys using design-based principles or censuses where you collect information on everybody. So there's an ambivalence, there's an uncertainty. I think in addition to the question of errors that might occur in surveys and censuses, and they do, but I don't think that's the major problem with them at all. I think the real issue is that in using small area estimates, you introduce a model and you introduce what I call model error. There's an additional question that needs to be considered, and that is when you come up with the estimates and when you come up with standard errors or measures of accuracy for them, they are conditional on the model being correct. Conditional on the model being correct, which is why I say to you, don't imagine that you can just go off and get anybody to set up these models, because you can make some terrible mistakes. I don't mean that I'm perfect at all. I mean, who is? I just mean that I've learned a lot about things that can go wrong. And I think that's a very important part of it. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that they are estimates. So if we go back to your, we're going to look at municipalities, and what is it, 750 of them? Is that say 750 of them. So we calculate estimates for each small area, and it's got a standard error attached. Let's put the model issue to one side. And we calculate 95% confidence intervals, but we've got 750 small areas. So 5 times 7.5, about 30 or 40 of these are going to have, the reality is going to be outside of the confidence interval. Now this is why, and I'm very, very pleased that we had input from WFP that said exactly this. When you've done your small area estimates, you have to do some validation. You have to go and check the ones that seem a bit odd. You have to do some work on them. And really, in terms of allocating resources, it's an important part of what you need to do. Because if you come up with an estimate that you think is perhaps not right, and we did when we were doing the small area estimation last time, and it proved to be, it was a coding problem in terms of the census. So that was okay, we worked out a way around it, but you do need to be continually looking for what might have gone wrong, because in the end, you're going to use this to allocate resources, whether they're called official statistics or an experimental series. So I think it's worth being cautious. I'm not sure I've answered your question. I've probably done myself out of a job, but I mean, not that I'm not sure I want one, but I mean, the point is really, I think you do need to be aware that you don't get something for nothing. And with the small area estimation, the price you pay of being able to extract a bit more out is that you have to make some more assumptions. You have to structure a model, and you have to get the model right, because otherwise you're just making up numbers.
Just from my experience being exposed to small area estimates for almost 20 years now, one thing I know is that it's not very easy. That's why we need brains like Professor Haslett. And I found pleasantly, as a pleasant surprise that it can be applied in different circumstances. Even in cases like South Sudan, when I was there, he was kind enough to come there on our request. And there he made some proposal, some feasibility, pre-feasibility on using our FSLN survey. We do 2 rounds every year, whether we can use it in place of census, and other data for small area estimates. Unfortunately, in a country like South Sudan, there is always focus on humanitarian needs, so we could not really work on this properly. So there are challenges, but there are also solutions, in my knowledge. And one very beautiful thing I like about small area estimates is that for each estimate, there is also the standard error. For example, we make estimate for each palika, and there is also the table for the error. For each, how much is the standard error. Based on that, we can decide whether I want to use it or maybe not useful. So that's really handy for the users. And particularly for me as a GIS person, when I first started going to work with STEAM, first I was afraid maybe I was just doing maths and what we produces, but there is also this GIS variable that can be input into this model. I found it fascinating. For example, in a country like Nepal, the elevation, which can come from the satellite data, GIS data, the road, distance to the road, that's just few examples of GIS-based variables, that those can also be fed into the model, and then they would find out which variables are most important and so on. I'm sorry I make it too.
No, that's very good. Thank you.
So
I think satellite data does have place for sure.
Thank you, Steve. I think we can discuss on it on for many hours because it's such an interesting, challenging but interesting something. But somehow we have to come to a close. So before close, I would like to hear from Dr. Ray. If you have something to add.
Thank you, Dr. Pari. Nothing left actually. We work under the Office of the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers right now, administratively, and then technically we work under the National Planning Commission. Because there is a statistical council, the major job of that statistical council is to ensure that there should not be any data gap in any sectors, and then there should be no duplications on the data produced. That council is headed by the Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission, and then secretaries of the different ministries, including the principal secretary of the all 7 provinces, and then academia are the member of that committee. That council is a very big council. Around 26 are the permanent members, and then remaining are the invitee members. And then we are holding a meeting of this council day after tomorrow. Fortunately, that should be the first meeting after the implementation of this Statistics Act. That council is mandated to oversee these duplication and then data gap issues, and then that's their main objective. And you all know that we work with the government. We are the government data producing agencies, and then we don't have that freedom to decide by our own, what to do and what not to do. We need to take permission from the government, either from the Prime Minister's office or from the Ministry of Finance or from the National Planning Commission, and then only we can move ahead. And that applies to this study as well. I can't commit that let's do this or that at the moment. We'll discuss with our field statistician, we'll discuss with the other stakeholders, including the provincial stakeholders if that opportunity exists. And then we'll brief with the Ministry of Finance, the Prime Minister's office, and then in my personal opinion, I see this is a very needed task for the National Statistics Office, and then most probably we will move ahead for the implementation of this small area estimation by using recently published census as well as the upcoming survey data. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity, the NERI.
Thank you very much, Dr. Regni. I can understand we are at the technical level, like as in the fields as Bhavars, we could only talk about the technicalities, feasibility, and so on. But the decision is made at the and highly, it's very good to have you here. Hopefully, you can see the value, right? That helps. The other thing that's coming to my mind before we close is we need the brain, yeah, to guide this. Just talking is not enough. So I'm wondering. The other thing is that maybe Steve has experience contributing to Nepal for almost 20 years now. But if we talk about another 20 years, maybe after 20 years, you won't be as energetic as you were 20 years ago. So that's why this national capacity is very important. Yeah? I'm so happy Dr. Regni is here. I can tell you with confidence that he has a very excellent team of very capable persons. We have also a colleague who is managing analysis. So I think when we do the next phase of SAE, this national capacity building should be one important focus. So before I go to closing, I would like to just explore whether colleague like Professor Haslett will be available, yeah, in case we need you in Nepal further.
Age and decrepitude will eventually take their toll. I think that there is one thing I would like to mention in terms of capacity building, and it's been a worry to me the entire time I've been doing the small area estimation. When people seek funding from outside agencies to do the small area estimation, there's enough money to do the actual work, produce the output, but there's not enough money for scholarships. And really, if you want capacity building, you're going to have to build in some scholarships to send some people to places where people know how to do this, where they can do a PhD, where they can come back, where they can keep talking to their supervisors, and you can build up this expertise. And I don't mean me, I'm Shanti, I think you're probably one of my last PhD students. I mean, it's just so exhausting being a PhD supervisor, and it takes 3, 4, 5 years. I just feel that's probably not the best use of my particular energy now. But I think that there are people internationally who've got expertise in this. They've all got different opinions, and not every opinion I agree with, but that doesn't matter. I think it's that discussion and debate that's important. And I think it's important that people locally get into that discussion and debate and are part of it internationally. So it's not just in terms of scholarships, it's in terms of looking for money to go to small area estimation conferences, for example, to talk to people, to share ideas, to save a lot of money because somebody actually has a good idea that you would otherwise not aware of. These things seem like luxuries, but they're actually critical infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Steve. What I mean by availability of Professor Haslett is your brain overall. It's not only you have a team, even your students, former students are now experts, yeah? So I think we should tap such brains to the extent possible for the benefit of our society at large. This is also one of the things I really enjoyed in my work with WFP before. Through this WFP, I had a contact. I was able to connect with you, and you mentioned this ELL method in small area estimates, where there is Peter Lanzo from the World Bank. I don't know if he's still here. I was also able to connect with him. So such, I think we should have a mechanism to tap such brains for the internationally and also in Nepal for the benefit of our society. So PRI, so you are doing your best. We have a roster of experts as well. So with this note, I would like to thank you all. And I hope you have all benefited from Professor Haslett's lecture today. And I have to apologize for one matter to you. You are here for your occasion to have holidays together with Hillary. I'm sorry if we somehow we misused or abused you for this, but we benefited a lot from your talk. We are very thankful to you. And before we close for some tea or coffee, we have to follow on with the concept. You are the special guest. We have to provide you a small question, just a small token of appreciation.
Oh, an NDRI cup, that's what I did.
Replica of one of our traditional videos.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you all. It's been a very pleasant group to talk to again. And I say again because there have been so many familiar faces. So it's been very nice to catch up, even if only briefly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. As we near the end of our event, I would like to express our deepest gratitude for your presence and participation. We have crossed the time limit by 19 minutes. I apologize for that. Thank you, everyone, for making this event a memorable experience. I hope you had a great time. For the final remarks, I would like to hand over the floor and request Dr. Shankar Shrestha, Executive Director of NDRI, for his closing remarks and conclude the program. After the voter thanks, I would like to request everyone for a group photo. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to apologize. We are not 19, actually we are 30 minutes behind the schedule. That's a very rare in the event that India organizes, but I think today's talk was very interesting, so everybody is willing to make their 30 minutes of extra time. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We are here for around 2 hours or so. And let me thank all of you, starting with Professor Emeritus Stephen Haslett, Professor of Statistics, New Zealand, for thinking us your friend so that you can give us your time. Similarly, Dr. Hemraj Rekmi, Deputy Chief Statistician, NSO, for your remarks. Dr. Sridhar Thapa, VAM Officer, WFP. Dr. Krishna Pahari, President of NDRI. And coincidentally, he also leads the Livelihood and Food Security Program of NDRI. And we are looking forward to finding a new research avenues. And I think this SAE could be one of the very interesting research initiatives that we can go forward in collaboration with, of course, WFP, NSO, and so on. And especially, I could also hear the colleagues from the CIMIT, they are also working on such fields. So the example of avenues for this works, especially for the Livelihood and Food Security Program of NDRI. Similarly, I would like to thank all the participants in person who are present here,
Actually, I counted the organization. There is a wide range of participation, especially just ranging from IIDs. It's a very popular research institute in Nepal. Similarly, AWO, and from the government side also, there is a very nice participation from Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development. Actually, my friend is here from MALD, and thank you for coming. And similarly, from the PRI, NSO, of course, there are many from the NSO and the WFP, and also from the National Planning Commission. Similarly, from the academia, we have a representation from University of Nepal, Himalayan College of Engineering, and of course, Massey University. And from the development partners side, we have a representation from UNICEF, CIMIC, WFP, and USA. Similarly, virtually, we had a participation from GIZ and WFP Rwanda, among others. And also, last but not the least, let me thank the NDRI team, our board members, general members, staff, and all the team who worked for this event. Actually, normally we allocate around 1 month or so for preparation of such events, but unfortunately for this event, we did only maybe 10 days or so. So there was some rush and maybe some technical issues like the internet also. So I'd like to apologize for that. But anyway, it's a not bad event, I guess. And thank you very much. And we will share the outputs of this discussion in our website, and we will share the link with all of you. Hopefully today is Tuesday, so maybe by this week, by Friday, we will send you the link of this coverage. And thank you very much for your time. We look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Now we'll be going for your group photo.
Recording stop.